Here we is. Last podcast lecture notes in boot camp. We're going to focus on density and matter today. So what the meaning of density is, we're going to calculate and interpret a couple densities, and you're going to do your fifth and final Google Classroom assignment for homework credit in this particular unit. So, density and matter. Density is a measurement of the amount of matter in an object. So it describes the ratio of a sample's matter and the space it takes up. It's kind of like how tightly packed the atoms or molecules within a sample of matter are. The more closely packed they are and the heavier they are themselves, the more dense the object will be. The more spread out they are, or the lighter they are themselves, the less dense the object will be. It's kind of how much space is in between your molecules or your atoms in a sample. It can be used, most importantly, to identify unknown samples because it does not change based upon sample size or temperature. Pure steel has a density value within a certain range, no matter how big the chunk of steel is. It could be a microscopic steel filing at a crime scene, or it could be a massive I-beam holding a floor up. If it's made out of the same type of steel, the density will be the same. So you can use that to identify things. Okay, I found this sample of metal on a crime scene. What is it? Find its density, and you can use it to identify the matter. Comparing the density of objects will help us determine if it's going to float or sink. So if an object has a lighter density, it will typically float. If it has a larger density, it will typically sink. Now, that does not consider engineering, okay? Massive sea tankers that go from China to America are made out of steel. If I throw a chunk of steel in the ocean, it's going to sink because it's more dense than water. The boat itself is engineered to float regardless of what it's made out of. So floating and sinking, we're talking about throwing a bead or a pellet or a chunk of this stuff into a bucket of water. It will sink if it's more dense than water, and it will float if it's less dense than water. Example density. Object has a mass of 350 grams and a volume of 500 milliliters. What is its density? Well, first thing you got to know, density equals mass divided by volume. So in our case here, our mass is 350 grams. Our volume is 500 mils. So the density equals 350 grams over 500 mils. And the answer will have the units, combined units, of grams per milliliter. So it takes all that mass and all that volume and condenses it down to how many grams are in 1 milliliter. You do the math, figure it out, and show me. An object has a density of 3.5 grams per milliliter and a volume of 100 milliliters. What is its mass? This is the same equation, but the different variables are given to you. So we'll go with a different color here. Density equals mass divided by volume. The density equals 3.5 grams per mil in this case, and the volume equals 100 mil. The mass is what we could call our unknown, or x. So all of a sudden we've created an algebra problem. It's actually a very simple one. So you say 3.5 grams per mil equals x grams over 100 mils. To solve for this, you isolate x by itself, which means you're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 100 milliliters. Because in algebra, when you do one thing to the right, you got to do it to the left as well. In this scenario, it cancels out on that side. Let me put this over 1 just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay? The 100 mils cancels out on the right, and you're left with 100 mils times 3.5 grams per milliliter, which will turn out into an answer where the milliliter units will disappear, leaving you only with grams. So your final answer really is 3.5 times 100. Do it on a calculator, figure it out yourself. Or move the decimal place. If you know your math tricks, you're good to go. So that's how you can calculate density and or use density to find out an unknown quantity in an algebraic fashion. Your last Google Classroom assignment of the unit, complete all the written notes on page 27, complete the online portion of the homework, and then come to class prepared to go over the last 3 pages in boot camp. But most importantly, there's going to be a pre-lab assignment in the Google Classroom so you can participate in the lab. Get your first 100 lab minutes of the year. Okay, so that's all, folks. Thanks for watching. See you in class.